Welcome to the Weights and Plates podcast. I'm your host, Robert Santana, along with my co-host, Trent Jones.
Hey, what's going on, man? And Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to all. I think...
How many times have you heard White Christmas so far this year?
I haven't. Have you?
You haven't? Oh, okay. No, I have, yeah. White Christmas, jingle bells dashing through the snow in lovely Tempe, Arizona.
Yeah, we have
Phoenix.
Plenty of snow here.
Are you having a good old New England Christmas, you know?
You love the stereotypical New England Christmas.
I'd never seen snow in my life until I got to, I guess it snowed a couple times in Texas, but never during Christmas. I'd never seen a white Christmas until I lived in Connecticut.
I saw it most of the time in Illinois, but it was maybe 75% of the time. And I was there till I was 25.
Yeah, so you actually had a white Christmas. Yeah, I just think it's hilarious that somehow there is this stereotypical New England Christmas experience, and somehow that gets propagated all over the U.S. as if we all have to sing the same songs, even when you live in Clinton, Mississippi. You have to sing the White Christmas, sleigh bells and snow, and yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. What did people do in 1850 in Appalachia for Christmas? That's what I want to know.
So wait, are you getting one this year?
A tree?
A white Christmas?
A white Christmas? Oh, no. It's going to be probably 75 degrees.
When does it snow there? I know you guys get snow at some point, no?
Well, not so much here. In Chattanooga, we're kind of in a valley. So we don't really get. It'll get cool. It's about 10 degrees colder than Texas, but yeah, we don't really get much snow.
You get that badass fog. Looks so cool.
Oh yeah, tons of rain. It does snow up in the mountains. If you go up in the mountains, it'll snow. But
then just go up to the mountains on Christmas Day. There's your white fucking Christmas.
There we go. There we go.
Well, I actually might get snow. I'm crossing my fingers. I'm in Rio Verde, Arizona. Rio Verde. I do know how to speak Spanish. I don't know why I speak like I don't sometimes. And I'm about 35, 40 minutes north of Scottsdale, an hour north of Phoenix. And we're a little bit higher elevation, 10 degrees cooler. And apparently, my good friend here tells me that I'm going to get snow at some point. And he says that on occasion it happens on Christmas. So maybe I'll get, a semi-white Christmas. I'm not holding my breath, but it would be nice. Not quite that cold. We're having a warm winter, so.
Please tell me that you have a saguaro cactus with some tinsel on it, and that's your Christmas tree.
Oh, fuck. I should do that.
Is that true?
Maybe next year. Do that. Dude, you know how expensive a saguaro is?
I have no idea.
Of course, the government regulated that because it's an endangered species because they pretty much only grow here. I think 95% of saguaros are in Arizona, and then the other 5%'s in California and Mexico.
Yeah, that's funny.
But yeah, so you have to have a special permit to cut them down or whatever, and then move them and all that. It's all this licensing involved, and
just drive down to Tucson, whack it with the machete, and throw it in some water. You'll be fine.
Some of them, they do have roots. I've seen them in some of these hikes I go on, but I want a saguaro so bad, dude. I want one so bad. So my neighbor got one. Then my other neighbor has one next to his property line, so it looks like it's his, but it's not. Bastard. But apparently the two of us got trees, and the neighbor that got the saguaro was like, well, you guys got trees, so I got a saguaro, so fair enough. I'm like, yeah, a tall tree, I don't know that it costs $20,000 though. I think if you get an old saguaro that's really tall and has, arms and stuff, I hear they could be $20,000.
Oh my goodness.
If you go to a nursery and try to have them deliver it and, plant it, then it's got to take. I got a tree in my backyard, but my neighbor has the saguaro. My other neighbor has a saguaro next to his property line, so it looks like it's his, but he has a tree. Yeah. But the one with the saguaro is like, well, you guys got trees. I didn't get a tree. This is what we talk about here.
This is Arizona problems, right?
Yeah.
They're like,
Dude, I want a saguaro so bad. I love that fucking cactus.
So, so we were talking offline, and you were wanting to talk about set points today and the concept of set points.
Yeah.
So what brought this to mind?
Well, it has come to my attention, especially when it comes to body fat, that most people that, hire a coach or, buy diet books, or it used to be in my day, they go on bodybuilding.com, but now it's probably Instagram or TikTok or whatever.
Oh, is that freaking Athlean X dude on YouTube?
Yeah, that guy. They think that, it's the whole
I want to look like that guy.
Exactly. You should title this episode, I want to look like that guy.
I want to look like that guy.
I want to look like that guy. I want to look like that girl, because I work with, male and female.
I want to look like Meg Squats.
Exactly. And they'll come to me and we'll start working, with somebody who has this goal of, I want to be ripped, right? And, sometimes they're eating like shit and you can get a bunch of weight off and, they might even get real lean. But other times, the amount of restriction and anal retentiveness required to lose additional body fat is not compatible with normal modern life, right?
Yeah.
And, they keep searching for this, this magic bullet. It's got to be a new training program. It's got to be a new diet. It's got to be a new supplement. And I'm having to have these hard conversations with people where I say, hey, maybe you're just meant to be a little bit heavier, or maybe you're just not going to gain that much muscle. I told somebody earlier today, I would love 16-inch biceps, or 16-inch arms, I should say, total circumference. It ain't going to happen no matter how many arm curls I do. I'm not built that way, And there's just so many other factors that go into that. And, we'll talk about that today, but I just have seen this trend over the last, 10, maybe 20 years of people that have goals that are incompatible with A, their genetic makeup, and B, their lifestyle, or a combination of the two, And if and you have a big problem if your goals are incompatible with your genetic makeup and your lifestyle. The second one, especially, I've had to tell people, I'm like, your goals are not compatible with your lifestyle. And, some people receive it well. Some people don't like to hear it. They want to jump to the next person that's going to sell them a magic bullet, And
yeah, and you've talked about, so if you go back a few episodes, I can't remember which one it is now, but you talked about what it took to get your body fat down into the low teens percentage.
Yeah, I got
right?
to 11 was the lowest I ever saw in a test.
Yeah, and it's like it took an enormous amount of effort over a long period of time, and how happy were you? And if we could measure happiness on a scale of 1 to 10, where was your happiness at that point when you finally hit 11%?
The last time I did it, I was a little bit more intelligent about it, but I'd say it was probably a 5. Other times that I've done it more stupid, it was more like a 1,
Right, yeah.
But it certainly wasn't a 10 on a 10 scale, by the way. I guess we didn't explain the scale, but 5 out of 10 is probably where I ended up, I was really hungry all the time. I was thinking about food all the time. My training was not the greatest. And I didn't weigh very much. I was $165, But,
so you put a shirt on and those glorious abs, are kind of all for naught, right?
Yeah, as Rip says, a guy who's 165 and trains looks no different than a guy who's 165 and doesn't train, because when they're both clothed. I agree with that,
right? Yeah. It just doesn't translate.
We spend most of our day in clothing, We're not walking around outside naked. Nobody gives a fuck about your abs.
Right.
And
so,
yeah.
I think that's, so you can go back and listen to that episode about, I think it was, one of the body fat episodes we did. But anyway, so you can go listen to that and you kind of see like what your experience has been trying to lose body fat and get down to extreme levels. But clearly for you, that 11%, if it required such extreme attention to detail with your diet and a high level of privation of things that you wanted to do and wanted to eat, then clearly that was not your body's natural point it wanted to be at, right? And I think that's kind of what you're getting at with the idea of a set point, right?
Yes.
Is that people have these, it's kind of like a revert. People talk about mathematically. There's like reversions to the mean, right? You can find patterns.
Regression to the mean, yeah.
Regression to the mean,
yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a model that kind of works with the human body too. Is that there's kind of like everyone has a set of genetics and a set of lifestyle, a set of behaviors that is driven by their lifestyle. It's both, right? It's not just one or the other. It's both.
It's both.
But the two of those combine to create this sort of average for you, and that for your body composition, for your performance in the gym, all these things. And in order to improve on that it requires a high level of effort. And the more you want to improve, the higher the amount of effort becomes in order to break beyond that average.
The way that I want to explain this is I want to kind of paint a picture of what this looks like in practice, because I know that our listeners have likely been through this before in some capacity. So,
Sure.
Let's say I'm losing weight right now. I have dealing with a tweak, so there's no reason to carry the extra weight. And I'm also trying to get my conditioning back up because I was out of shape pile of shit for a little bit there. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not insanely fat by any measure, but by BMI I'm obese probably, but that's bullshit.
Right. So am I.
But yeah. I was obesity on the BMI scale is a badge of honor, by the way, as long as you're training, If you're obese and you're, a young man squatting 135, you have a problem, but, if you're a young man squatting 435 or 535, you're probably not obese, Contrary to popular belief, typically a guy who's strong looks strong. And, he may not be the biggest guy on the bodybuilding stage, but you look at a guy who squats over 500, he's probably got a set of legs on him,
Yeah.
He's not going to have bird legs, You see a guy who's benching 350, 315 even, probably has some muscles on his fucking chest, probably has some shoulders, There's a correlation between strength and aesthetics. And you can get into a academic argument about that, but we're not going to do that here because we're not having academic arguments. We get people that come in here out of shape and have no evidence that they train and want to look better. They're not trying to compete for Mr. Olympia, and they're not trying to set a world record in powerlifting, They're trying to go from being obese and untrained and mostly fat or skinny fat to looking like they're doing something, okay? That doesn't require an insane amount of training complexity. That's a different episode entirely, but let's just clarify that here. So, I started this weight loss thing I'm doing it. I hate calling it a cut because I'm not even depriving myself right now, and that's the whole point. I was at like 197 was the highest I read on the scale because I don't weigh myself as much as I used to. I think I was probably 198, 199 at some point. I just never captured it on a scale. Yeah. Most recent weight was $188. So I've lost 10 pounds in about, 7-8 weeks. I have to go back and look at when I started. And I haven't tracked a damn thing. I don't have a meal plan printed out hanging on my fridge or on my smartphone. I just took all the snack food out of the house. I cut my drinking down so that, I won't have more than a pour on a calendar night. If you're wondering, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not killing a bottle a night, but, I might have 2 or 3 pours, 1 or 2 nights a week.
Right.
And now I'm doing like 1 pour, a few nights a week. And, I just changed my food environment, made different choices. And, I'm doing a little more conditioning, although I don't think that's contributing that much, knowing what I know about that. But what I will say is when you do conditioning, for whatever reason, you're more motivated to be adherent to a healthier diet. I don't want to eat donuts after I've done a hard hike, up Echo Canyon Trail and Camelback Mountain for those of you Phoenicians. Mm-hmm. It's a hard, short hike. I would much rather do that than push a fucking prowler. I'd just much rather do that. So I do, and it's close to the gym. It's entirely uphill from the moment you get on the trail. And I have to stop a lot to let my heart rate go back down.
Yeah.
You're basically doing deep fucking lunges continuously until you get to the top.
Right. Yes. So I've done some trails like that.
Yeah. And I'd rather do that than push a sled. So that's what I do. Anyways, I don't want to get too off topic here, but I lost 10 pounds without doing anything elaborate, and I'll probably lose another 5 to 10 with the same approach. But, I'll probably get to about 180, and, I'll probably stay there and eventually go back up once my adductor heals, Mm-hmm. But, I'll probably get to 180 without any issue. But let's say that I was suddenly motivated to get ripped. I want to get ripped. I can tell you right now that there's a good chance that it's going to get hard at around 180, maybe 185. I don't know. I haven't lost weight in 6 years, other than I lose a few pounds, like when I was hanging out at 185-ish in 2019, I got down to 178 or something and then went back up, so handful of pounds here and there, but my lifts kept going up the whole time because it wasn't appreciable weight loss, But this is the first time that I've, try to lose, a chunk of weight, because squat and the deadlift are what drive most of your gains. Contrary to what the bros might tell you, when you squat and you deadlift, you use a bunch of muscles. So if you can't squat and deadlift heavy or do heavy compounds, your lean mass in terms of pounds, it's not going to move very much. Especially, I'm an advanced lifter, man. I'm not going to gain 10 pounds of lean mass in a year. It's unlikely at this point, not without drugs. So my point is, there's no reason for me to be that heavy if I'm not lifting that heavy. So I'm like, well, let's trim down some fat, heal this damn little tweak, which was an avoidable tweak, by the way. But that's for a rehab episode, which we will have.
Yep.
Well, hey, we should bring Double D in for that one.
Absolutely. Yeah. He would tell you motion is lotion.
Exactly. So I understand that. I don't want to squat every day because I don't particularly like squatting as much as I used to, but I do hike every day, and that's how I'm getting all that range of motion. I cycle some days, so I move my hips and knees quite a bit. So, it's getting better each week. So anyways, that's why I'm losing weight right now. My deadlift's still going up, and usually that goes up as you drop some off the midsection. But I think back to my last cut. So my last cut, I started at 205. I was a fat pile of shit. I followed silly bullshit, overcomplicated programming, and I had to get down. So I went from 205 to 184 fairly effortlessly. Didn't really have to adjust. I was tracking macros at the time and trying to be real precise with it. But I was still eating a lot of food, so it wasn't very hard, I got from 205 to 184 between the months of, I want to say September, October, late September, early October 2015 to January 2016. And I know this because I had a meet in that month, so I had to weigh in. So
okay.
So I lost
about 4 months.
Yeah, I lost 19 pounds in 4 months. It was pretty steady. There were a couple holidays in there. I had a meet at the end of October, so I had to feed myself for that, So there was probably like a month there that I didn't really cut, where I was a little bit more lax, for that meet, and then Thanksgiving, then Christmas. So 4 months, and probably, 3 of those were productive, and I lost 19 pounds. And, I wasn't hungry. I wasn't low energy. My lifts went up, my squat, I think my best squat when I was a big fat guy was 395, which is why I decided not to be a big fat guy. I'm like, this is not justified. It's not even double body weight,
Right.
I had to take a look at what the fuck I was doing, so I'm like, this is not justified at this body weight. So, lost, first 19 pounds, and then squat went to 400. Imagine that. Deadlift went up 475. Went from 205 to 198, hit 470. Then from 198 to 184, hit 475. And then I wanted to continue cutting because I was just so frustrated with being fat, and I was still bought into this whole bulking and cutting paradigm, right?
Yeah.
Didn't understand leverage very well, and decided that I wanted to go the distance and, get really lean, because I always wanted to do that, right? Everybody who's been in the gym has wanted to do that at some point, and we've all done it, Rip included. I had to talk to him one day about this. Like, I've done every stupid fucking thing you guys have done, so trust me when I'm saying this shit. When I say this is bullshit, trust me, I know this is bullshit.
Right.
So, we've all done it. We've all seen the abs and wanted them for ourselves, right? So the journey from 184 to 165 was quite different than the journey from 205 to 184, right? So first thing that happens, my strength crapped out. So I tried to do another meet in April of 2016. At that point, I was 176. I was an 80 kilogram lifter. I was 176, and my lifts went down, right? So I lost off all of my lifts, right? And then after that meet, so I had to take a month off to prepare for that meet. So I lost another, March, April, February, March, April. So in the next 3 months, so remember, 19 pounds in the first 4 months, but really 3 months when you factor in holidays and meets, right?
Yep.
And then the second 3 months, I only lost 8 pounds. Isn't that interesting? It was
Look at that. It's almost like perfectly half of what what you did the first time.
I should say it was more like 2 months, because it was the end of January. So in about 2 months, I lost 8 pounds. So as you can see, the weight loss still. So that's 16 pounds if I was able to, or not even 16. That'd be 12 pounds if I was able to keep that average weight loss, right? Because 8 pounds, 2 months, 4. So 12 instead of 19. So as you can see, the weight loss is slowing, right? And I went into that meet, and it was a good meet. I did what was there, but I lost strength, and at that point, my squat went from 400 to about, what was it, like 370, I think, 369, 370. Then I benched. So my bench went from, I think I was at 290 at 205. And then that crapped out during the first cut, actually. I didn't talk about that much because I did a strength lifting meet during the first cut, so I didn't test my bench, but I'm pretty sure I lost off of it in the first 19 pounds. But in the second 8 pounds, my bench was 254. So then the deadlift, this was partially programming, partially dieting. The deadlift, remember, it went from 455 at 205 to 470 at 198 to 475 at 184 down to 440 at 176, right? And that was partially programming too, but I don't think I would have went up any more than that, as I was getting skinnier. So then after that meet in April of 16, I decided, okay, I want to finish this out, I want to go all the way. I'm still not lean enough, And I was probably about 14% body fat or something at that point at 176. So then I went down again. And this time I went all the way. The lowest I ever saw was like 162. I think I weighed in at a meet at 160. I don't really count that, but I think I was dehydrated that day because I was in the afternoon session and I fasted, and then I didn't want to eat until after the 2-hour weigh-in. And I weighed in at like 1 p.m. and I was 160 that day, but I was never 160 on my own home scale. But as far as that cut goes, the lowest weight I saw was 162. It usually settled around 163 to 165. So from 176 in April of 16, took me until the end of June, so May, June, to get down to 165. So now we're 9 pounds in 3 months.
That's like almost perfectly like every time you cut to the next level, so to speak. It's almost like a perfect 20% reduction in rate of weight loss.
and what I didn't talk about there were the calories. So, I'd have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure the first 19 pounds I lost probably in the upper 2,000s, 2,500 to 3,000 range, if I had to guess. Yep. And then the next 8 pounds that I lost, I was probably, 2,400, something like that. But then to get from 176 down to 165, 163, whatever the fuck weight I want to call my end weight, 11% body fat, I did training and non-training days at the time. I was following the RP templates, which are fine. I like them. I coach people on that. And I think they're great. That's why I still work for them,
Yep.
But my non-training day, I remember my carbs were like 130 carbs a day for the days I didn't lift. And
let me clarify that for you low carb people out there. That's not a lot.
No, that's not. That's not the low carb.
Some people will be like, 130 a day. That's pretty reasonable.
Yeah,
that's not too bad.
You're under eating.
No.
You have an eating. You're under eating. You have an eating disorder. You need to go hire a therapist. Then go on my website and hire Juliet. She works with you people.
Yes.
And
there we go.
And if you're offended, then stop listening to this. I've had to refer out so many times. I don't have the patience. I'm not the eating disorder guy. I'll put that out there. Disordered eating, I've built a tolerance for, but eating disorder, body dysmorphia, well, I shouldn't say that. Body dysmorphia I deal with. Eating disorder, that's Juliet's wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Anyways, sure. Yeah, that last bit, man, I just remember probably 2,100 calories. If I had to guess, I don't know. This is self-reported, and we all bullshit self-reports, myself included. If I had to guesstimate, I was eating 2,100 calories, I think, on the days that I lifted. So on my non-training days, I was probably at like 1,700 or 1,800.
Okay, sub 2,000. I was wondering if you're going to get down to that point. Okay, yeah.
And, I've heard guys report even less, but they're also lifting a lot less. So let's just, so if they're reporting less, it's probably actually less, but their number's off, just like my number's off. Mine's probably higher, theirs is probably higher. It's all relative.
I'm going to do another clarification here for people who are not in the know. 1,700 calories for an adult male is very little.
I was dying. I was fucking dying. I'll never do it again.
Yeah, that's a big cut. So on average, though, so if you average out, I don't know how many days you were training, 4 days a week at that point?
At that point, I was doing, 4 to 6 days, actually. I did 2 days of just Olympic weightlifting, which, was an hour. 50% of it was drills and warm-up, so, 30-minute actual workout of cleans. Or a clean day, a snatch day, in addition to my 4-day powerlifting split.
Okay, but were you eating your training macros on those days, on those Olympic days?
I had training macros for those days that were lower.
Okay, all right. So if we averaged out though, if we averaged out the whole week, that would equate to somewhere around 2,000 calories.
Yeah, probably 2,000 calories.
Because you have some training days a little bit higher, non-training days are lower, under 2,000. So net, that's from where you started. You started, let's call it 3,000 calories a day, right? And you cut down just a little bit to lose that first 20 pounds.
Well, let me back up. I do remember what my calories were at the top of the mass. I was at 4,100.
4,100. Okay.
Yeah. So I probably went down to 3,500 in the very beginning. I'd have to go back and look, but but the guy I was working with wouldn't have made 1,000 calorie cut.
Okay. Yeah. So that just goes to show you right there. If you just kind of look at the big picture, zoom out now, right? Yeah. After telling us that, okay, so you go from like somewhere in the mid 3,000 calories, average, and then you lose 20 pounds by getting down to essentially 3,000 calories or 2,800 calories in that range. And then you lose another, 15 pounds going down to, 2,500, give or take. Mm-hmm. And then to lose the next 10 to 15 pounds, like you have to go sub 2 almost, like you get somewhere around 2,000. So the net, the spread there it's half. You had to halve your calories over that entire time period to ultimately get down to where you were. So yeah, I think that's an interesting story because that illustrates the idea of set point nicely. I would bet, I don't know this, so we'll see how close I am. I would bet that your set point, quote unquote, is probably 185 pounds. Maybe 180 pounds.
That's what I think. I can get down to 180 to 185, no problem.
Okay,
I have to kind of lower my calories to get to 175, but I can get to 175 without being severely restricted, but I just can't get
But it takes some effort. You actually have to think about it.
Yeah, okay. There's a slight effort there to get under 180, but to get under 175, that's when the extreme effort kicks in.
Extreme effort. And that's not a big swing, So that's the other thing about the set points, is like, obviously it depends on your absolute body weight, right? If you weighed, if you were 6'7", you weighed 305, it's the swings are going to be larger just because you're starting with a heavier body weight than you were. You were starting at 200, right?
Yeah.
But if we look on percentage terms, right, it doesn't take very much before the extreme effort has to kick in order to get more result, right?
Well, here's the thing. I've done cuts before. This is the interesting thing. Now, body fat tests, DEXA, BodPod, whichever one you pick, the absolute number, in terms of fat mass, lean mass percent, that's bullshit. What you want to look at is the trend. And as I've gotten older and have dealt with these testing methods, I think from a practical standpoint, so long as you can develop some proficiency, the skin fold's probably the most useful because you're actually measuring something physically, versus relying on calculations, estimations, hydration, and all this other shit that you can't really directly, handle or observe, right? So, it's not the most accurate. I'm not claiming that, but you know how thick your skin is each time, and you know that most of what's under your skin is body fat. So, it's giving you a fair representation of what's going on, but is the actual fat mass, however many pounds, a lean mass, however many, probably not, but at least okay, I'm losing fat, I'm gaining fat by pinching those things. So anyways, I bring up body fat testing because I've done a variety of methods over the years. I've done BodPod, I've done DEXA, I've done hydrostatic weighing, I've done skin folds, I've done the bioelectrical impedance scale. I have one in my bathroom, right? They're very cheap now, But what I've noted, what I noted when I did that last aggressive cut was that, and looking through all my old body fat tests before I started training for strength and lifting heavy and hitting the barbell real good, I had done cuts down to like 150, 155 pounds, and it always got to this point where my energy got low. I started looking gaunt, and I felt like shit all the time. The very first one I did, my libido went out the window because I tried to do zero carb, which is not possible, by the way, but I believed that I was eating zero because according to all the labels, it was zero. Don't do that. But I had all sorts of shitty symptoms when I got under 160 pounds, like 155, 150 pounds, right? And it's all relative. It really has to do with fat mass. So when I looked at those old fat tests, every time I reached that point where I felt like shit, fortunately I had a lot of BODPOD tests. So same instrument. The fat mass was around 20 pounds. And guess what? When I finished that last cut, I was heavier than I was on the previous cuts because I had trained for 5 years, right? Or for three years at that point. I had 3 years of serious training under my belt when I did that hard cut. And I had close to 500 deadlift, close to 400 squat, close to 300 bench. And I had a 210-pound press at the top of my mass, and I finished the cut with a 185-pound press. So I was a reasonably strong lifter. I was able to do chin-ups with 100 pounds over body weight when I was fat and when I was thin,
Yeah.
So, I had a good foundation. So I'm just trying to highlight the difference here. So at this point, I got to 165. I was 12% body fat, 11.8, and one measurement. I was measuring it more often back then because I was neurotic with it all. So, I'm going to do one every couple months, So the lowest I saw was 11.8, but it was around, let's just call it 12, right? Well, my lowest BOD years ago, before that, and my lowest dex was like 14 at 175. My lowest BOD was like 13, and I was 155, but I was nowhere near as defined because I didn't have the muscle mass, right? So now I'm 165, which is what I weighed when I finished high school swimming, and I considered myself skinny fat. I was just under muscled. I understood that after that cut. I'm like, I was under muscled at 165. That was a problem. So, I know it sounds like I'm rambling, but I'm going somewhere with this. What was interesting was when you looked at the compartments and you did the math, I had about 20 pounds of fat, and that's when it got really fucking shitty.
Yeah.
So I started, and I'm like, okay, there's margin of error. These are, instruments and, different cuts, different time, all the variables. I factor all that in, but I'm like, well, it looks like somewhere around 20 pounds of total body fat mass, the weight of all the fat in my body is roughly 20 pounds according to their calculations. Maybe it's 25, maybe it's 30, maybe it's 15. It doesn't matter. But what I noticed was in each cut, even when I was more muscular, everything got shitty the closer I got to 20 pounds of fat mass on the body fat measurement.
Yeah.
And when I was skinny, when I was less muscled and training like an idiot, fucking around in the gym, doing it wrong, I was lighter in body weight, but my fat mass, once it got to around that low 20s, I started feeling all those shitty symptoms, low energy, hunger, preoccupation with food, missing lifts, tired all the time. So that really drilled home to me. I'm like, there's a set point. Now I've worked with thousands of clients and I've seen that manifest in other ways. But for me, it looks like not even body fat percentage, because some people say, oh, that shouldn't happen until you're X percent body fat, single digit body fat. And it's like, well, no, that's not necessarily true. And I'll get into that in a second. But it's the total mass of your fat. For me, factoring in margin of error and all that bullshit, when the fat percentage measurement gets close to 20 total pounds, regardless of whether I put on more muscle, I'm not losing any more fat. It's just, I will, but I'll have to starve myself and go completely insane. And you do develop disordered eating from that because, your body dysmorphia gets worse because look at what you're looking at, right? It's all based on how you look, so then you're over analyzing yourself. Oh, I'm not that jacked, I'm not that ripped, this and that, I had a great coach because he really helped me with the psychological part. He's like, you're never lean enough. You will never be lean enough in your head because that's what happens when you start starving that much.
Right.
And I was like, oh, this definitely puts me at ease. I know that I'm full of shit. That helped me get through it. I never really spiraled down that crazy psychological hole that a lot of people go through because part of it's my own personality, but the big part of it was that he kind of walked me through it. He's like, this is expected. He's like, you're starving yourself. You're going to go insane. And you're trying to get super lean, so you're never lean enough, And I'm like, so these things are symptoms. Okay, so I can reverse these symptoms by fucking eating more,
Yeah.
So in sum, I had a set point, and it seemed that throughout the years, and at that point, 16, I've been paying attention to this sort of thing since 2002, so about 14-year span, and all these different body fat tests, roughly around the same place. When my fat mass gets to a certain point, all these physiological mechanisms start kicking in to prevent me from losing more fat. And in my case, it's right around, low teens for body fat, low double digits, right? But here's the kicker. For some other people, it's much higher. And I can understand why somebody would be pissed about that, but it doesn't make it any less of a fact.
Right. Yeah. So, I don't have the same amount of, education and like, technical experience that you have, but I've certainly witnessed this with the people that I coach, right? And we all know. So, we've mentioned on this show the soma types. Isn't that what they call somatotypes? Somatotypes,
yeah.
right? Okay, so we've kind of kicked those terms around, right? But everybody's heard them, right? You've got the skinny ectomorphs, you've got the mesomorphs, and you've got the kind of round barrel-chested endomorphs, right? The kind of apple-shaped, right?
Yep.
More or less, right? And so the mesos are like kind of the heavier, more muscular build. They're the kind of naturally jacked guys, right?
Typically, I like explaining this a lot. So the ectomorph is the skinny, ripped guy with ripped abs and veins, and he's like 130 pounds, right?
Yes, right.
And he eats like a fucking house, puts away food.
Eats pizzas and beer and all that shit. He still looks like that.
Yeah, he puts away food, and he's, skinny and low body fat. So he's like 7% body fat, and he's like 140 pounds, and he eats, 3,000 calories, 4,000 calories a day and can't gain weight, right?
Yeah.
And part of that's bullshit. They just don't. A lot of them don't have a big appetite. That's part of the reason they have trouble gaining weight. That's what I've learned working with that body type. Then the mesomorph is the guy who looks like a bodybuilder without touching the weight. He looks like a skinnier bodybuilder, but skinny's not the word for it. Like a lightweight bodybuilder without doing anything. He just
just naturally has like pretty good muscle bellies and like good size, and
every muscle pops out. He has veins, and he has. Just very well defined, low body fat, reasonable amount of muscle mass. And then he starts lifting weights, and everybody accuses him of being on steroids, even though he's not.
Just gets huge.
Yeah, and the guys that are like that do steroids end up being competitive in bodybuilding, They tend to be naturally like that, but smaller, and then to be competitive, they have to get bigger. And obviously, even with their good genetics, they are subject to limitations, so they need drugs. And then the endomorph is, the fat guy who's real strong, typically, the big fucking round apple-shaped guy, but typically has big shoulders, big forearms, You see these guys, in construction yards a lot, Contractors, they tend to be in manual labor jobs, if you want to.
I think about the old school strongmen,
strongmen.
Before Eugene Sandow.
Yeah.
And even some moderns in strongman. Yeah, a lot of those guys, they're naturally like when they're at competition form, right? When they need to be as strong as possible, but also still very cardiovascularly fit. Mm-hmm. They carry quite a lot of muscle mass, like a huge amount of muscle mass, but also a lot of body fat.
Yeah,
too.
they have both.
Yeah, so we've all seen these people at the gym, right? And we've all experienced them. You are probably some mix of these somatotypes. It's a helpful little model for explaining the genetic variation between people, right? And their predispositions.
And most people have elements of all three. We've seen the extremes, of course. They're there,
right,
but
yeah. Unless you're like a model or like you're probably some blend of those three, right? It's just kind of a helpful like rule of thumb, like a little mental kind of model we can use for explaining the differences. And I think it's interesting with a set point conversation because it works from a weight loss sort of leanness thing. It also works for a muscle mass thing, right? Like. I've had this experience working with some ladies and they're that are 40 plus in their 40s and in their 50s even, and they get to a point where it's a real struggle for them to add weight to their upper body lifts. And it's not a problem with their mechanics. It's not really a problem with their programming. It's really more of a problem that they just don't have enough muscle mass in their upper body to get the leverages that you need to move a bar, like at the press in particular, right? Mm-hmm. If you're not an explosive person and you can't generate a lot of hip drive, then you kind of have to rely on the anterior delts to do a lot of the work to get the bar moving so that, before you can even really get the rest of your shoulder girdle and your triceps involved in the movement.
Oh, yeah.
So if that's the case, you kind of just got to have a certain amount of size in your shoulders to get good leverages to make the bar start to move. And a lot of these ladies just don't have it, right? And so that's just one little example. It works with a muscle mass conversation too. Like everyone has this amount of muscle mass that running through a novice progression will probably get them, and maybe some small amount of intermediate training will get them pretty close to this sort of amount of muscle mass that they're going to get. And it doesn't really move from there very much. It takes a whole lot more work. And, but some people are more gifted than others. Some people's initial gain of muscle mass is going to be much greater than others, depending on all of these factors that we've already talked about. So that impacts not only your body composition, right? What you're going to look like at a given body fat percentage. Yeah. It also impacts your performance too, right? And I don't know if you've run into this, but sometimes people get a little frustrated because they may be, especially with my younger lifters, they might get a little frustrated watching other people roughly their age make these huge gains on their lifts. And those people oftentimes are more mesomorphic, and they just have a decent amount of muscle mass. They've got great leverages, and then once they start to train and they get a couple years under their belt, they've built this huge amount of muscle mass. All of a sudden, when they do lifts, they're just like everything, every muscle, every joint in their body is just like a coiled viper. There's just huge amounts of muscle mass ready to move, get that joint moving. Okay, and if you don't have that, it's just you're not gonna have the same end numbers as the other person. So, yeah, I think this is it's a good model for understanding the development of a lifter, the development of an athlete from a performance perspective, as well as a body composition, how you look like in the mirror perspective.
Yeah, and I think we have set points in everything. Any skill you try to develop, there's a point of diminishing returns, and some of us, and for some of us, it's at a pretty low level when you compare it to people that are very gifted or, I guess world records, right? I'm trying to think of a random skill, like, playing the piano, for instance,
Yeah, I can give you one, so I'm a guitar player, and of course, like, if you pick up the guitar, at some point, you're going to want to shred. Mm-hmm. If you give a kid a guitar, then he's gonna want to shred.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like you see these guys who play the guitar like impossibly fast. I mean, they just have outrageously fast, and it's not just how quickly they can touch the string and like fret the note. It's also how quickly can their other hand move the pick fast enough to articulate the note. And then everyone's had this experience where you practice and you practice, and you get your mechanics as fluid as they can get, and you still can't play as fast as some of these speed demons.
Yeah.
Like, what's the difference? And it's like there's kind of a set point there too, right? Like some guys just have a freaky nervous system that can make these like very fine twitched muscle movements super fast. And like I just can't, there's a point where I've cleaned up my technique as much as I possibly can, and I just can't move any faster. It's like asking me to jump 36 inches on a vertical. I mean, you can put a gun to my head and I'll never do it, right? Like, 'cause you just can't do it.
No. And I think of my girlfriend, for instance. She can read very fast, and and she's an auditory learner. And no, you can put a gun in my head, I'm not going to be able to retain information. Somebody speaks at me, it's just not going to happen. So she's one of these people that our modern academic system favors. She scores well on standardized tests. She, will get 100% on everything in a class, in a college course. But it's funny. She claims that I can write better than she can because of the way her brain works. She's very, very anal retentive and wants everything to be perfect. So she will take forever to construct sentences and then redo them a bunch of times, and then her paper will come out great. She was an A student, she was a straight A student in elementary, high school, college, finished her bachelor's in 3 years, got a PhD in 3 years in a summer, and went straight into academia. And, again, she can read fast, soak the information up quickly. She can retain things that people say to her very quickly, but she struggles to write,
Yeah.
And I can retain, once the information's there, I can keep it, but I have to read things about roughly about 3 times is usually good, 3 to 4 times. She claims the average is 6, so, I'll take it. Got to win somewhere here, But for her, one pass and it's there, She's like, it's like she's downloading data onto a computer, And again, I noticed that when I read more, I do get faster, but I'm not going to have the kind of speed she has. That's natural gift, and she trained it. On top of it, she was a hard work. She had work ethic, so she put the work in on top of it, which allowed it to develop to the very high level that it got to, right? But no amount of training is going to make it that easy for me. There's people I know that are very extroverted, like my dad. Me and my dad are very different. I'm very introverted. My dad he just loves being around people, so it fuels him to interact with people, right? And I learned a lot of the basic social skills being around that type of personality. So I know how to talk to people, engage, etc. But I lose energy doing that. He gains energy doing that. So
yes,
if both of us decided to take up a career in sales, he's always going to outperform me because he enjoys it more than I do. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So the theme of what Trent and I are talking about here is there are genetic limitations to everything, and we got to play to our gifts, first of all. There's a bigger theme of it. But also, you can improve at things that you're not going to be great at. You just have to understand your expectations. I'm always talking about managing expectations here, right? Like the phrase that I like to use is one that my friend gave me, my best friend actually from high school. We're still best friends. I was opening the gym and, he had his own business at that point. So, he'd been around the block before, and this is my first rodeo with a brick and mortar. I had the online business, but, I had to deal with construction and all that. And I'm like, he came over to look at how the project was going. We were doing fine. I'm like, yeah, I got to get a sink for the bathroom. They got the plumbing figured out, and this sink's a piece of shit. I can't get it to work. And he's like, all right. He's like, look, man, you're not going to buy the fancy marble sink that looks all nice and this, that, and the other. He's like, what you need to get is good enough to make money. So we went there and got the cheapest sink that was functional and up to code and put it in, and nobody's ever complained. We got a nice looking trim. It fits the room. Nobody's complained about my damn sink in the gym. The water comes out. I haven't had to fix anything, right? But anyways, I love that. I love that phrase. Now we use it for the contractors I was hiring loved it too. When I started saying it to them, because of course I stole it because that's what we do, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I say. I'm like, when it comes to any skill, you may not master it, but you can, be good enough to make money.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all you need. Like I don't, like I said, sales is not my favorite thing to do. I get kind of drained, having to do that, but good enough to make money is what I say, that's just being an introvert. My dad can do it all day long, so I'm just, that's just
those people are aliens.
Yeah, exactly.
Those people are aliens.
I don't get that
I'm the
shit.
same way. Like I don't have, sometimes people confuse that because I don't really have social anxiety at all.
No, I don't either.
I'm perfectly fine, like hanging out with people and make conversation with just about anybody. But yeah, the difference is I go home and I'm like, I just need to like hole up in my cave downstairs for another day and recover.
Yeah, that's what I try to explain to people. They're like, well, you sit here and talk to us all night, and then I'm like, yeah, then I go home by myself and chill the fuck
torched.
out.
Yeah,
I'm torched. I might light a fire in the back and sit back there in the darkness of night looking at the stars.
Yeah,
but yeah, no. So let's bring it back.
I think that I think you made a great point here. Like, look, we're pointing all this out not to bum you out, right?
Exactly.
The point of this whole episode is not to be like, yeah, sorry, you can't do that. You can't be as jacked as The Rock, Like, hopefully you already knew that, but if you weren't and you've struggled with this, like, hopefully that you've gotten not only just expectations management, but you've also learned, like, where should you put your energy, right? Because, like you've mentioned on the show before, we all have a finite amount of energy and resources, right? And we can only put so many resources towards training, towards our career, towards our family, et cetera, right? We're always balancing. We're always prioritizing. And so what I hope you get out of this episode is that you can find your strengths and put most of your energy towards those things that you're good at, and that you can bring the other things that you're not good at up to a reasonable level, right? Like, I'm not a great squatter. I'm just not. I'm not a bad squatter. I don't have bad leverages or anything, but I'm just not great at squatting. I don't really like it. I've done it. I forced myself to do it. It's I've never like pussed out on squats. I've trained my mind to do them, but I don't really like them. And I've done them. I've done thousands and thousands of squats at this point. I don't think I'm going to like them anymore after doing it. Like, it's just my attitude about them is not going to change. And my knees are kind of wonky. Like I just get random like pains and shit in my knee when I squat heavy and I really push it. Okay, so whatever. At some point, I had to realize that what, I could chase a 500, 550 squat or whatever, which would be a lot for me, but I think I'll be okay squatting in the mid fours. I squat 435. That's my best 1RM right now. I'd like to squat 450. That's a goal for me.
That's where I'm at.
Is a 450
we're
squat.
at the same place.
Yeah, but it's not really 500 squats. Not really a goal for me anymore, right? And it's not that I think I probably could. I think I probably could. Okay, but the cost, the cost of it, I'm not willing to pay. I just don't fucking like them. On the other hand, I do think that I'll be able to press 275 in my lifetime at a body weight of sub 200. I think I'll be able to do that. I've pressed 245 so far, so I'm not. I think I'll get there. I like to press. I love it. Okay, I'm good at it. I've got good leverages for the press. All right, so I put a lot of my energy into pressing, into benching, into deadlifting. And I just kind of do squats to a respectable level. I don't ignore them. I don't not squat. But that seems to be a good, sustainable way to approach training. And my goals is to focus on the stuff that I'm good at and set some goals for those that force me to push myself a little bit. And then I just sort of try to keep the squat at a respectable level. And I'll give you another analogy here. A non-training analogy. As a musician, I've done the same thing. I've played guitar for 20 years, for most of my life. And, I'm not, the distance between how good I could possibly get in my lifetime and how good I am now, it's not that much, right? It would take thousands more hours to get a little bit better for me at this point. And I realized a long time ago that I'm really good at coming up with parts and creating songs and writing things. And I'm not so good at the really technical, super fast, shreddy stuff. I probably would be a terrible classical guitar player. I love that music, but man, don't ask me to play it. And so I have adjusted my expectations of what I'm capable of. And then I've also adjusted my practice. For me, it's not so much practice. It's my practice as a musician is what I write rather than what I actually sit down and look at a book to play, But I've adjusted my habits to focus more on my strengths. And then a few times a year, I will go and try to do some mechanical work to make sure my technique is at least, decent. I'm not holding myself back, but I don't really put much more effort into it. I focus my stuff on being creative and writing cool stuff because that's where my strength is. And I'm a lot happier for it. And I found the same thing applies to my training when I do that as well. So that's what I hope that y'all get from this episode is learning how to plan your training from a very macro standpoint and also to plan your nutritional habits and your lifestyle habits and how you look.
Yeah, that's essentially what we're kind of getting at is that you have limitations. There's limits, genetic limits in terms of how far you're going to go. And sometimes you may not like those. And that's fine. I'm not going to press 315. I accidentally pressed 225. I don't know how the fuck that happened. I was stuck for 5 years, and then all of a sudden I got on a good run. And I tripled 200 or I doubled 205 or something. I think I doubled 205, and I'm like, if I did that twice, therefore. And I had to do some things with my programming for a few weeks to quote unquote unlock it, But I got it, and I'm like, well, that was fucking cool. I got 2 plates on the damn press. I didn't expect that,
Which is a very respectable press, right? Yeah. It's not world class, but anybody that trains would be like, that's a respectable press.
But I think you and I need to dial this down because, we think we're weak piles of shit, but there are guys out there that spend years trying to squat 315,
Sure.
Or even less, and that's really who we want to talk to here. And, if that's the case, I remember Wolf telling me, Michael Wolf, years back, he's like, there are guys that I have trained for 6 years and they just pulled 350,
Yeah.
And, that's just, the genetics aren't there. But that person could be out. I mean, this was in Manhattan. So the guy that was probably training was making a bunch of money, So,
right.
It's, again, just because you're not great at one thing doesn't mean you're not great at anything, But,
yeah.
It's just understanding limitations. If you're that guy that, 225 is a heavy squat for you and you've, addressed all the recovery components, then you just have a slow run ahead of you, and you just got to manage expectations. It's the most important thing in your life. Do you want to make this your job to go from 225, if that's a hard squat after your first year of training, to go from that to 315, it's going to be a journey of years,
Right.
Just to get what's, a mediocre squat at that, some people would consider it below average. I consider it mediocre. I trained a lot of guys that I would refer to as quote unquote middle of the bell curve. And I think a lot of guys that are in the middle of the bell curve and their LPs somewhere between, high 2s to mid 3s, if that, then, you get your outliers that'll go into the 4s and some guys that go into the 5s, but it's not happening left and right, I don't like the mean. I like the mode, I wish we had the mode on these things. What's happening most frequently,
and we try to be as honest as we can about, our findings and our experience in the gym. But, coaches have to sell too. And it sounds a lot better to be like, I just trained this guy through LP, man. He ended at 375 for 3 sets of 5 on his squat. Yeah, that sounds great, but that's not the average person that we're coaching.
The beauty of it is the average person we're coaching really cares about his bench, his press, and his deadlift.
Right, yeah.
We all end up hating squats one way or another, but you have to do them.
That's true.
You have to fucking do them, just like I have to do them. I'm hurt. I'm kind of hurt right now, and I'm still doing them. And I hit 295 this week.
Yeah. By the way, okay, I told you how much I hate squats. Here's what I do though. Right. Yesterday I started. I've never done these before, but I started doing it because Andy Baker posted a good little article about it, and I'm like, okay, I'm convinced. I'll try your way, Andy. Okay. I started doing high bar paused squats.
Oh God, those are rough. I've done those
for my light day. It's sort of my lightest day. And that's the thing. It's light on the bar for me, but it doesn't mean easy. And so there you go. I'm still working on my squat mechanics, 5 years later, and doing high bar squats to train my quads a little bit more, get a little bit more quad development, more awareness of my quads during the lift. So I'm not bagging on squats. I just want to set the record there.
Oh yeah,
I'm not bagging my squats, but I still hate them.
I've been squatting for 19 years. Even before I discovered all this material, I felt guilty at the idea of taking a squat out of a program. It was like something that was intuitive,
right. Yeah,
I was like, I was bought into muscle confusion and all that bullshit. I'm like, well, maybe I should take the squat out and leg press. I'm like, that just feels wrong. I couldn't do it. That was the one lift that I would not swap out. I would do dumbbell bench instead of bench press, or dumbbell press instead of seated press, or machine instead of that. I would never ever stop squatting. It was like it felt sinful. There was something deep down inside that was like, no, you have to squat. So, and it's funny because then I found all this material and we're all kind of on the same page with it.
We all feel the same. We all hate them.
Yeah, we all hate them,
but we still do them.
There's something about doing that thing that
I just can't quit you. I just can't quit you squats.
I feel the most productive. I hike before I go to the gym, so my legs are already kind of warmed up, and then I squat, and I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm sore from the fucking hike, and I do it, and I get it done. But anyhow, so, we've talked a lot about training. Let me just tie it up with diet, and body fat. Some people, you might have a guy that's, I guess we talked about somatotypes, that's an endomorph, you might be that guy who's 5'6", and you're 185 and chubby. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. A fat guy who trains looks better than a fat guy who doesn't train.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And if you are eating like a pile of shit, you can clean that up, and you might lose some weight, But if you think you're going to be Brad Pitt in Fight Club, that's probably not going to happen if you're the guy who's naturally a little bit heavier. If you have thick wrists and thick ankles and, barrel chest and wide shoulders, and then you have a little bit of a belly, you're probably always going to have a little bit of a belly. But if you train, all the muscle mass overshadows it for the most part. You're just not going to walk around with ripped fucking abs. And for females, if your set point is what? If you're 5'2" and your set point's 125, then maybe you're never going to be 110. Or if it's 130 or 140 or 160 or 180. I've had women that, they're taller, 5'10", they're like 185, and they might get down to the 170s, and that's it. But then I have other women that start there and they get down to 145 because they were eating like shit, But if you address all of the variables in your diet, because this episode was really mostly about diet, this applies to training too, and we've talked about that. But if you address all the variables, you clean up your diet, eat a healthy diet, you lose some weight and then it stops and you're still quote unquote fat by your own standards, that means you probably hit your set point, And then you just got to reevaluate your expectations. Some women are not going to be a size 0. Your hips won't allow for it. And some men are never going to have 18-inch arms or 16-inch arms or maybe even 15-inch arms. It's just there's genetic limitations there. So the best thing that you could do if you're naturally on the heavier side is train. Because training makes everybody look better. A skinny person looks less skinny. I got people like my girlfriend, perfect example. She's on the other end of the spectrum. Small frame, narrow shoulders, tiny.
Very small frame. Yeah, very petite.
You've met her. Yeah, very petite, small frame, She can put it on her lower body if she trains, She has a torn labrum, so she can't push her hips that hard. But, she she started lifting 5 years ago. She just pressed 64 for 5, and she's excited about putting a 10 on each side,
Yes. Yeah.
And
that's a great example.
Yeah.
And I want to get Christy on to talk about a lot of different things, but also to talk about her programming experience or just her journey on her upper body lifts.
Yeah, the bar was her 1RM in high school.
Yeah, so there you go. It's and she's exactly that problem I was talking about earlier on, where she just started with a small frame, small skeleton, especially around her shoulders, and small amount of muscle mass, and she's worked really hard to put more muscle mass on there, but she still doesn't have a lot of muscle mass on her shoulders, right? It's just not a lot, and so her leverages for that press are just terrible because you're asking a tiny muscle group to do a whole lot of work to get that bar moving.
But then guess what?
And I'll go on a limb and say she's probably not like crazy explosive, so she can't generate like an enormous hip drive and launch the bar off. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so not many people are, right? So
she can construct a clean though, so I don't think that she's a motor moron either.
Sure, yeah, maybe, yeah, that's sort of like my wife. Very, very good motor awareness, if you will. Like she's very coordinated, but zero explosiveness.
Yeah. She claims she's not coordinated, but she put together a correct clean, so therefore I'm going to say for her.
She's coordinated.
If she put together a correct clean, she's coordinated, because there were people that I had to give up on with that.
Yes. Oh, a lot of people. Yeah. The idea that the average person can clean, but it's going to be a lot of work.
Yeah.
So if you can clean with just a little bit of effort, then yeah, you're probably above average in coordination. So I mean, we could go on and on with examples, and we'll certainly talk about this more. But hopefully, it's giving you a little bit of food for thought. That we're getting close to the end of the year. This is going to be the last podcast of the year.
It is, isn't it?
We'll close out 2021, and one of the things that I like to do this time of year is to start to kind of put together a plan for what I'm going to do next year with my training. Just sort of like a macro thing. It doesn't have to be like, you don't have to put numbers on a page. I used to do that. To be like, and I just pick some random number. Like, I'm going to deadlift 575 this year. And it'd always be like some ridiculous number too. And now it's more of just like, what am I going to do? Like, I'm going to make 2 strength runs this year, and I'm going to cap those off by either doing a meet or I'm going to do a little mock meet for myself. Like, there you go. That would be a program, or a plan rather, for your year. But anyway, you can kind of sit down and look at kind of big picture. What do you want to do with your fitness, with your health, with your training, with your body composition next year? And hopefully this is giving you a little bit of context to manage your expectations around those. I don't even want to call them goals. It's just sort of like long-term thinking, planning. Mm-hmm. But sure, we'll call them goals. But hopefully we've given you some food for thought for managing your expectations, but also for thinking about where you can put your energy and your effort this next year and get more out of your training.
That sounds good to me. So yeah, you pretty much hit it on the head. So I think we could probably close out. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, it sounds good. Well, tell us where we can go and find you this year and maybe in the new year if we all survive into 2022. It ain't over yet.
Not yet. We still got 10 days.
Yep.
You can find me at www.weightsandplates.com or on Instagram at _Robert_Santana or weights_and_plates. Or if you're in Phoenix, you can find me at the gym. The address is on my website.
Yeah. I think you forgot, is it HTTP or HTTPS?
Oh shit! I think it's HTTP.
What? See, I can tell that you're a child of like the 90s because you say www dot website.
Yeah.
Does anybody say that anymore?
Really? I didn't.
I say it. I say it too.
Shit,
but,
man. Is that gone now?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you don't even type it in anymore. You just type in the name of the website, and it just magically happens in Google.
Nobody does the World Wide Web string anymore, huh?
Yeah. Right. I don't think so. Do you still type www dot?
Yeah, I do. I mean, yeah.
No. So you can just type in, like startingstrength.com. And you don't even have to type in the www; it just does it for you.
Thanks.
The wonders of the world. See, technology is. I think they say like 35 is the age when you just start to lose technology. It starts to pass you by. So it's coming for me. Well, you can find me before I completely lose touch with technology. I got 3 more years. You can find me on Instagram at marmalade_cream, and you can find me on my website marmaladecream.com. No www. All right, guys, it has been a wonderful 2021. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for letting us in your ear holes. We will see you next year.
Take care.